Anybody, anywhere,
It's time to take command.
The Cardiac Commanders are the Clutch Commanders!
With former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen.
This pass caught by Paulsen, the tight end.
And from 106.7 The Fan, Grant Paulsen.
This is Take Command as we look back at the Commanders' stress rehearsal with the Cincinnati Bengals. Pleased to be with Logan Paulsen. I am Grant Paulsen. Logie, 15 years ago, I'm at RFK Stadium watching Temple and UCLA, and there's a guy with my last name catching a pass, and I thought it was one of the coolest things ever. Lo and behold, I'm on the then Redskins beat a few months later, and this undrafted free agent is on the roster. Got to cover you every day for 4 years. You and I have become good buddies, and I am happy to be working with you moving forward now on this Take Command show that you guys have made such a success to give people a little more insight into the scheme and some of the X's and O's of the Commanders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, obviously there's that great RFK story, UCLA playing Temple or whatever, but also people don't know this. You're the reason I really got into media, right? So remember I was in Houston playing my last year and I was going to get cut and you called me and you said, "Hey, we're looking for an analyst to do the XFL stuff." Remember that? And so
yeah.
My first job outside of playing professional football was doing those games with you and sitting in that crazy box at the way end of the field trying to call a game for the radio. So it feels like a full circle moment to be back doing this stuff with you on Take Command.
Well, you're a rock star, and there's nobody smarter in the market when it comes to this football team or just breaking down the X's and O's. I've enjoyed the show from afar and thoroughly enjoy getting to learn from you whenever we chat, whether that's on air or not. So I'm excited to be doing this. Enough about me, though. People want to hear about the Commanders and the Bengals, but just to let everybody know, we are both unrelated and brothers separated at birth, and we are fired up to be doing this moving forward.
I tell you, last night someone asked me, "Is your cousin here?" And I was like, "I don't know."
No way.
Yeah, it happens more frequently than you would think.
Well, people do think they legitimately think we're related, and I made the mistake early on. I just thought it was funny when I was covering the team. People used to ask, when you played, obviously. I mean, this was dozens of time a day. Are you related to Logan Paulsen? So I finally just started going, "Yeah, he's my older brother." Yeah. And it just thought nothing of it, but it probably stuck with some people. There are people that actually think that we're related. It's not that common a name. And the SEN spelling specifically, it's not that common. So I totally get it. But
I know we talked about doing a family photo at some point, but we should probably actually do that. You know what I'm saying? Get everybody in the sweaters and do the hug. And
yes. When, that was exactly right. Back in the day when I was covering you, I was like, it'd be really funny if I had two older brothers, younger sister, big family of 6, and we're all about, the same height and not in great shape. But if Logan, who is just a strapping lad playing in the National Football League, like the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Danny DeVito photos, just standing there as our extra brother, thought that could be pretty fun. But Logan, there's a lot to get into here. This was the closest thing we're going to get to a dress rehearsal in 2025 in the preseason. Starters for a quarter for the Bengals offensively. They had Joe Burrow in there longer than I thought they would, which gave Washington, I think, some good looks clearly of what they're going to get as far as a defense goes going into the regular season. But let's start on the offensive side of the ball. The big story before the game was that Brian Robinson was not going to play and that Brian Robinson may end up not being on this roster, which we could talk about a little later. But my first big takeaway, and I want to get your insight, it seemed to me like the running backs really excelled and took advantage of an opportunity. Chris Rodriguez, first carry, 40 yards, ended up with 62. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt had 2 for 32 to start, including a 27-yard touchdown. What'd you see?
Yeah, I think the thing that I really kind of took away after rewatching the film this morning is just, you could tell that in the first matchup against New England that there wasn't a lot of thought. It was just here's our day one install, let's go run it. And you could tell they put a little bit more spice on this one, right? They ran runs that they ran a lot last year, stuff that they got to later in the year, specifically that wham, I'm going to call it, or that influence trap, where you get the play side guard or the center, I forget what it is. It's a play side guard pulling, right? So the 3 technique plays up the field like he's getting a pull, and then the tight end comes and cracks him. And that run has kind of come into vogue over the last 2 years in the NFL. And that's one that they started getting to, I think, about the Tennessee game last year and kind of how, they were looking for kind of a wrinkle, and that was the wrinkle. And then here you see it, in their kind of first dress rehearsal preseason game. And if you're Cincinnati, like, you weren't probably prepping that too much, right? Like, that was something that wasn't high in the Rolodex. And also you see the GT, the counter in the red zone, like that kind of stuff is good to see from a schematic standpoint. But again, you also got to kind of take it with a pinch of salt, because like, how much did Cincinnati prep it? But I think you see sharp execution, good double teams. I think the offensive line, despite the kind of the mismatched parts, was playing well together for the most part. So I think there's a lot of good things to draw from it. And I think you mentioned the backs, like, Chris Rodriguez, like maximizing some of those dirty runs. Obviously, everyone's going to remember the long run, but the one that sticks out to me is like the wham they ran the second time, or the influence trap they ran the second time, where it's a little bit murky, he breaks a tackle, it ends up being a 10-yard gain. I think that's awesome to see. See the explosiveness of Bill Krosky-Merritt. So lots of positives to take away for sure. Love the scheme, love how Cliff game planned it, but I think it's just important for fans to remember, like, how much did Cincinnati prep those runs, and maybe that's why they were so effective early on in the game.
Krosky-Merritt's been the guy that everybody's been talking about essentially all camp long, and it feels like the expectation is he's going to be the big beneficiary if Robinson's not on the roster. But it kind of, to me, seems like Rodriguez is a bit of a forgotten man, right? Not only was he the first guy on the field last night, for whatever that's worth, but he's got a little bit more of that B-Rob physicality to him, and he's had a really good camp. How much of what's happening with Robinson is, we talk about Krosky-Merritt excelling and his stock rising. What about Rodriguez?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rodriguez, to me, has had like a really nice camp. And I remember watching, I think, the first or second day of camp and thinking, man, like, he seems like he's in pretty good shape. And then every day finding kind of opportunities to be successful. And I think about the Burgundy and Gold scrimmage as kind of the most recent data point outside the preseason game. And he was excellent in that, right? You see the physicality, you see his burst. I think that was one thing 2 years ago that was kind of difficult. It's like, he just wasn't bursty. He was big. He was very thick, but he wasn't quick through the hole. And now I think last night, obviously, is a great example that all the fans are going to be aware of. But throughout camp, he's kind of looked like this, right? So I know Bill's kind of the guy that everyone's going to be talking about, but I think when you look at McNichols, his ability to run physically and be explosive and be a good pass protector, C-Rod has a lot of similarities to that. And I do think if you're kind of comparing McNichols to C-Rod, you see a physical, a better physicality. And then I think when you look at Merritt, it's like they're all kind of versions of the same guy, but Merritt's a little bit more twitched up and explosive from an acceleration standpoint. Like, his long speed probably isn't as good as, like Jahmyr Gibbs as an example, but his ability to burst through the hole is extremely, extremely high. And, like when you look at some of his advanced kind of physicality metrics, like the acceleration numbers are always top shelf. So I think you got three guys there, and we haven't even talked about Eckler, who are kind of different versions of the same player. They're good in all three phases, not great in all three phases, but like they have their kind of superpower. C-Rod with the power rushing. I think, honestly, McNichols with the pass protection. And I think you look at Merritt and you say he's kind of the explosive play merchant in your traditional run stuff. And then Eckler does Eckler things.
Yeah, Rodriguez, for what it's worth, last year, when you look at DVOA at the rushing position, which is like a per play efficiency based metric on down and distance, score, opposing defense, it takes a lot of relevant things into equation, was their best valued analytical back, 34.2%. McNichols was in the low 20s. Eckler was about 15%. Robinson was actually minus 4.2% in that metric last year. And there are other like rushing yards over expected and different deep dive analytics where Chris Rodriguez has actually been viewed really favorable in the R&D community. So I'm interested to see what their vision is for him, what this looks like moving forward. But it does seem like they're a nice tandem. When Krosky-Merritt came into the game with the explosiveness, then you had Rodriguez, a little bit more of that physical battering ram style that we saw at Kentucky in the SEC. It seems like a fit. And as you said, Eckler was not really a part of this thing, but third downs, 2-minute, 4-minute passing game, he's still going to have his role carved out. And the way I view it, I don't know if you disagree with this, Logan, but we're talking about what, like 12 to 15 carries a lot of weeks that Brian Robinson would generally account for. You're going to see Deebo Samuel run the football. First play of the game last night was the jet action end around. That's going to be a staple in this offense. Daniels, who had the 14-yard touchdown run, albeit on a scramble, is going to have some of those carries as well. So I don't think you need a back like a Merritt or a Rodriguez to be running the ball 20 times to get where you need to be offensively.
And I think that's probably reflective too of like the league. That's a league wide trend. You know what I mean? I think those kind of bell cows have kind of become out of vogue, and I think a lot of the fantasy community is probably like really aware of that. Because it's like, who's going to be my running back for my fantasy team? Who's going to get all these touches? And obviously, if your running back's playing for the LA Chargers, excuse me, there's a good chance that he's going to get a lot of touches and kind of be that bell cow back. But I do think this is the direction the position is and has been going for a long time. It's hard to find the elite runner. It's hard to find the Gibbs, the Bijan, the Derrick Henry, your Saquon Barkley, right? It's hard to find that guy. If we can't find that guy, why don't we just get a bunch of really good football players, very solid football players, and kind of feed to their skill set a little bit, right? And it's funny you talk about C-Rod and those advanced metrics. People say, oh, well, that's an analytic, that's a nerd stat. But I think when you watch the film, man, like his ability to maximize dead runs, like where there's a free runner or there's penetration, like he does a great job of that. Like he's got great vision. He gets his shoulders square. And again, like when I look at runners for the draft, like that's one of the things I look at first is like, how do you handle bad runs or murky runs? And he does an excellent job. And so I think when you talk about a guy that's maybe earned more opportunity, I think C-Rod's a great example of that. And then obviously like another guy that maximized murky runs in college was Bill Krosky-Merritt. So they've got kind of these two guys where you can see the value of maximizing bad runs.
I thought his first couple runs against the Patriots were that way.
Yeah.
That's not the phrasing that I've heard or would use. Like, that's smart. I haven't thought of it that way. But there were DOA, kind of backfield guys in front of him, makes him miss. He gets one or two. And on the stat sheet, you're going, he's averaging 2 yards a carry. But that could have been -2. It's essentially 4 yards maybe over expected.
Dude, 100%. And you look at, I think, like as a play caller, and I've dabbled with this at the high school level. Like when you are in 2nd and 8, it is so much easier to call your offense as opposed to 2nd and 12, right? So when you have a back that can just consistently keep you on schedule, and it's huge. That's a big coaching point. I talk to the running backs in high school all the time. It's like, can you just keep us on schedule? It doesn't need to be a home run, but we have to be on schedule. And I think with both of these guys, that's what you get. And I think when you look at how Cliff called games last year, that was such a priority for him. Like we're in 2nd and 10. How do we get to 3rd and 5? And so now you have two backs, again, who aren't going to do it all the time, but can get it done at a pretty high level. And I think Austin Eckler does a pretty good job of this as well. And, McNichols isn't like this every down runner, but like when he does touch the football, he runs hard downhill. And even if it's a bad run, there's free runners, they get you back to status quo. And I think that's something that you look at. And you mentioned the B-Rob kind of being in the negative with some of those statistics. Like that's a big weight on an offense if that's not managed correctly.
Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen take command, working our way through some of the observations. Logan got to watch a good portion of the game back and study the film this morning after Monday Night Football. One more thing on the running game, so to speak, and that was as the game went on, I thought there was less room to be had, but to me, that's a compliment to the starters. I mean, some of the holes early on, Chris Rodriguez on the 40-yard run, it was patience, it was vision, but it's massive. Merritt doesn't get touched on that 27-yard touchdown around the edge on the counter tray look. What did you see up front? They did not have Laramie Tunsil going. They did not have Chris Paul. Those two runs specifically went to the right side behind Allegretti and Josh Connerly. What were you seeing?
Yeah, so I think, on obviously, Merritt's touchdown, that's a GT counter. That's like, the Hogs play, right? And so Chris Paul, like, he's out in front of that thing, right? Wiley's out in front of that thing. Like, they're kind of paving the way there. John Bates does a great job on that front side. It's funny, they ran that play earlier in the drive. I think it was, so they had the explosive run. They're in the red zone, and they ran the GT counter. And Bates had like a 6 technique, so a guy lined up inside of him, and it got a little bit bloody. The guard couldn't get around, and ended up being a tackle for a 1-yard gain. And to me, this is so funny, like how they call the same play the next time they're in the red zone, obviously for Bill's touchdown, and they get a 9 technique. So Bates is able to track down to that inside backer. There's a little bit of foot traffic because of how well he's able to get on that guy. He takes 2. Paul absolutely smokes the defensive end, and then Wiley's kicking out a corner. Like, that's exactly how and why you draw the play up. And so just front spacing in terms of run efficiency, I think is always interesting because fans don't even think about it. They're like, this is a good run. We got to run more GT. But I want to run GT versus prime looks, right? So I think it was interesting to see, like, maybe they didn't get the exact look they wanted the first time. They get it the second time. It ends up being a touchdown. And then,
let me ask you this. Does Cliff know, like he's calling the plays on the sideline, when they line up and there's a 6 tech and it's just a tougher assignment than for Bates, does he know the play isn't going to work as well, or is it still capable of being the same result versus a 9? Because if you call a play and you get the wrong coverage, maybe right away you're going, oh, let's kill this. Let's get out of this.
Yeah, so there's a lot coming from Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, that background, like you would have, let's take GT for example, and we don't like it versus it's a 6 technique, like because they're or a tight 5 maybe, because that guy's going to penetrate the gap, and penetration kills gap scheme pull plays, right? So when you look at that, you say, well, why are we going to run it to that? If he's going to play a 6, like let's run an outside zone, or let's run a perimeter toss play, right? And so Kyle would have that up and basically be like, okay, it's GT. We're going to can that to bounce. And so then Bates would just block down. It becomes more of a position block. The play side guard pulls, we're on the perimeter. And then you get into an optimized look. Like there's great stories of Harbaugh when he was up in San Francisco, where they'd have 3 plays called at the line of scrimmage, and they would check to whichever one suited the front best, right? So like if it's an over front, an under front, or if it's odd spacing, they had 3 runs called, so they'd get their absolute best call versus those looks. So I think it's always interesting. Like for example, on the influence trap, usually you don't want to run that to a tight shade, right? So like you want to run it to a 3 technique, someone head up over the guard, because there's a little bit more air there on the crack, and it just helps out the run a little bit. So I think that's something that fans don't think about really, but I mean, it's cool to see that in real time when you're watching the game, like, oh, this is probably not the look they wanted. They get the look they wanted the second time out, and ends up being a touchdown.
By the way, Dan Quinn started his press conference. He singled out 2 players from the whole group, basically, from the night. Deebo Samuel's end around that went for 19 yards. I thought he looked really fast in that jet motion first play of the game. But
Didn't
Dan
he?
Quinn
He looked really fast.
I mean, he was just like, that was San Francisco Deebo from a few years ago, like where his whole body's moving. He just runs in that funny way anyway. But he looked like he was the fastest man alive. And I thought that was cool to see. Dan actually said it was great to be on the other side of it because he'd seen him do it to him for years. But then the other one was John Bates. I mean, how good does that feel for Bates, who's just doing the dirty work in the trenches, that your coach singles out 2 players in his opening comments after a game, and one of them was that you were dominant up front, he thought.
Yeah, I mean, John Bates, to me, is one of the best. He's probably the best in the NFL at being this block and wide guy. So it's really fortunate for me to get to watch him every week, because that's what I prided myself on when I was in the NFL. And everyone's going to talk about the GT. Everyone's going to talk about the wham. But like some of his best blocks are totally unheralded in this game. Like they had a duo, duo, think double teams to the front side of the run, and he's going to motion and then kick out Shamar Stewart. And Shamar Stewart looks like he's about 275 right now. And John Bates wears it on the face, is able to sustain his feet, and then kind of drive that guy inside as he's penetrating. And Bill Merritt is able to bounce it outside, cut it up, and ends up being like a 7-yard gain. And so that block, no one talks about that block, but that block is so freaking hard to do. It's hard to do versus big players like that. And the fact that you can just put him in there and get that done and ensure that the O-line has double teams, it really maximizes what you can do in the run game. And also, I think, quite frankly, it kind of gives you a physical edge. Like you talk about like players that, like we want to be like Cliff, like we want to be an 11 or light 12 personnel team with Zach. Like those personnels aren't like super gritty, no mouthpiece. And when you have a piece like that can insert, that can block an end, it just adds a toughness and a grit. So I think like it's great that you shout that out, because you talk about competitiveness and toughness as a team. And here's a guy that is kind of like, to my estimation, embodying that toughness at the highest level on the offense. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like asking you about a blocking tight end is like asking an elf about December. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of when they like to do their work. We're going to have Logan empty out the rest of the notebook on offense, and I want to get into the defensive observations he's got. Bengals, Commanders, Monday Night Football, under the lights. This is Take Command. Take command, Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen, Bengals Commanders at Northwest Stadium last night. Probably the one true opportunity we'll get to see the starting offense, starting defense together on the field this August. Logan, I want to, before we go to the defensive side of things, look at some of the young receivers. Jayden Lane, the Virginia Tech product, had 3 catches for 42 yards, couple on the outside where his speed was very obvious. He was getting big cushions, also made a catch in the slot as well. And then Luke McCaffrey, who didn't catch any passes. I wanted you to take a look at his performance and see what you saw. Were there any opportunities there? So dive into those two guys for me.
Yeah, Jayden Lane was a lot of fun to watch, man. He's got a little bit more route running savvy to him than I thought initially. Because like when you see, he's a 4-2 guy, a 4-3 guy, and you watch his film at Virginia Tech, you see some of the nuance, but it's like that offense was so tough, man. The quarterback play was really poor, and like the types of route schemes they're running aren't very NFL ready. So it's cool to watch him. Like he has that one, I think it's his first catch of the game where he's running that out where he kind of inside stems, push verticals, throws a DB by, and it's a great ball by I think Josh Johnson to get that ball outside, and he catches it. Great play, but like the route was fantastic. I'd also say like while you see a lot of really positive things with Jayden Lane, he blocked well in the run game. He's physical. There's still a little bit of polish that needs to be applied to some of the routes. Like he had one with Sam Hartman where he's running a comeback and he kind of gets up to the top and kind of rounds out of it a little bit quickly, and the DB is able to read it. But I think all of the other good stuff kind of informs like, hey, man, like this guy has some route running nuance. If we just get him to be a little bit more consistent, maybe he can be kind of your Olamide Zaccheaus this year, where he's kind of doing the dirty work in the run game. He can find explosive opportunities and win some of these one-on-one matchups. So I think he obviously still got to grow. He's a rookie, but like I think you like the direction that he's going, especially given the data points from camp.
Being out at camp, he was one of the guys that stood out to me the most. He just routes people up. There are times, and I'm talking veteran, like Jonathan Jones, I thought's done some good things. There are times where, at the top of a route, leaves him behind him, breaks out. You saw it last night where he made one of those catches where he's got like that shiftiness and suddenness. I'm not slapping like a Santana Moss on him, but where your body just moves like you're kind of gliding.
It's different.
Yeah, and the long speed of 4.3, 4.40, the ability to run, I'm just super intrigued. I know Cliff earlier in camp said he does a lot of things they didn't even see on film at Virginia Tech because he wasn't asked to. I don't really know what he was referencing, but it sounds like maybe you think, or that could be the route stuff that you're talking about.
I think so. I think
he played outside and inside. Like last night, Dan Quinn said, we're just trying to see if he can do it. And that's where 2 of the catches came from. So I thought that was encouraging.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things about him and kind of maybe exceeding expectations is like he's been through camp like the 3rd most explosive player that's practiced, right? So it's been like Zach, Debo, kind of 1A, 1B, and then Jayden Lane. And there's a reason for that. Like you mentioned his physical skills, but also like his ability to, run routes and have some nuance to him. And again, like there's a lot of stuff, like even in last night's game, that I have not seen in camp, or I definitely didn't see it at Virginia Tech. Like you can just tell they weren't emphasizing it, right? So I think it gives you a lot of confidence that like, again, he's got some growing to do from a consistency standpoint, right? Like we just talked about, like, when we get to the top, I got to make sure it looks the same every time. I'm coming back friendly to the football every time. I'm protecting the throw. But you see the out, you see the comeback that he ran on the first drive where Josh Johnson's able to hit him. Like there's a lot of really positive things to his game. So I think it's just like, can he continue to grow? And if he continues to follow the same trajectory, I think absolutely. So it feels like, he's like kind of locked in that 4th receiver spot, barring an injury heading into the season.
Feels that way. 3 catches, 42 yards. Also want to call attention to a contested diving catch he made on the Hartman throw. Like that was big time.
That was a crazy catch.
That was unbelievable. I mean, he's got a defender wrapped around him. Looks like the vision is even being blocked by an arm. I thought that was big league stuff. What about Luke McCaffrey? Because if you're just watching the game last night, it's no targets, and you're wondering how many reps did he play? What was he doing? Was he just getting cardio? What'd you see?
Yeah, so I mean, there was a play. It was start of the 2nd quarter, I want to say, where they're running like kind of. So they have a 3rd down package, and the package is probably a strong word, where they run like Hank, which is like deep hitches on the outside, and then a deep hitch over the ball, and then you got 2 flat control players, right? And then kind of their variation off of that is the flat control, the hitch over the middle, and then those guys run goes. And I'm not sure, I haven't talked to anybody over there, but that might be a side adjust. Like if you get pressed, it just becomes a go automatically, or if that guy's inside 5, it might become a go automatically. And so Jayden Daniels made a ton of hay on that last year. You think about throws to Diami, throws to Terry, like throws to OZ down the field where he did such a good job throwing those deep balls. And they called that play they were on like the 40-yard line going in to score. It was like 2 plays before Josh Johnson's interception. And so Luke McCaffrey's on the left, Lane's on the right, and they both run goes, and they both beat the guy. And in my mind, I was like, Jayden Daniels can throw it to either one of these guys, and this is a touchdown for the offense, right? And that's where Jayden Daniels' superpower of finding the explosive plays down the field is not just by accident, right? He's so good at throwing that deep ball. But Luke McCaffrey has 2 steps on the DB. Lane has 2 steps on the DB. They were even when he reached the top of his drop, like that ball's probably got to be out. And so he ends up throwing it to OZ over the middle of the field. Completion, we're on schedule, fine. But if Luke McCaffrey catches that ball there, like for a 40-yard touchdown, like we're probably having a different conversation about his game this week. Now, like, again, there's some stuff where, like, is he getting the most separation? No, but he got plenty of stuff. He actually, like, smoked that dude on that play, and that's a starting caliber DB in the NFL. So even though there's been some ups and downs to his camp, I think the one thing that sticks out to me is, like, he is going to give you every ounce of effort all the time. He plays special teams pretty consistently at a high level. Like, he covered a couple kicks last night with that second group. And then he does have this ability to win down the field. Like, we were talking on the phone last night, like, he's got some interesting athletic metrics. It doesn't show up all the time, but when it does, like in this moment, it's like, man, 40-yard touchdown, like that'd be a big time thing for the stat line for Luke McCaffrey.
His raw athletic score coming out was off the charts. I mean, like, it's not just a bloodline thing with the back of the jersey name. I mean, this is a guy that if his last name was Paulsen, he could be the third member of this podcast, but also, the RAS would still stand out. And you see some of that flash occasionally. You hope his time's coming, right? Because particularly maybe it's the third preseason game coming up as they tamp down on some of the starters that are out there. Like, you just want to see him put something on film. And I'm sure you felt this way as a player at times as you're kind of buried on a depth chart or whatever. Like, when you get these games, last night's second half, I was kind of thinking this, like, go make a play. It's time to show something here. And he's just got to put a few reps together where he's getting the football. But obviously that's for the fans to see, that the team's going to see even when he's not, to your point.
Yeah. And I think also, like, the quarterbacks are, like, this is part of the issue, like, of preseason games, is you're dealing with quarterbacks that are also trying to make the roster, also trying to make plays, maybe not as physically talented as the starter. And as a guy that's been in that situation a bunch of times, like, that can be kind of frustrating. And, like, your relationship with the third quarterback isn't as good as it is with the second quarterback, but the second quarterback's not playing this game. So you're like, I'm going to run the route the way the second quarterback wants me to run it. And it's actually the third quarterback wants me to run it a different way. And I know that sounds insane, but that's true. Every quarterback has a little bit different preference. They see it a little bit differently. And so when you're in this third preseason game, I mean, it's a great opportunity to get film, to get reps, get your name out there, make some plays. But it also is really, really challenging, like, even in the run combinations, right? Like, I'm working with a tackle that I've never worked with before, and it's going to be a little bit messy because he's going to be a little bit wide. I might be a little bit tight. And this is why, like, these are these guys' opportunities to make plays. We're talking about Luke McCaffrey right now, but again, there are a lot of mitigating factors that make it difficult at times to kind of stand out because you haven't built the chemistry with the people you're on the field with.
All right, let's pivot to the defense. There was a lot to get into on offense, but defensively, you got to play Joe Burrow for longer than I would have thought. Where do you want to start here?
Yeah, I think the first thing that just jumped out to me right away was just it felt different on the sideline. It felt different, especially with that first group when you're watching the tape. And what I mean by that, like, you can see the communication with the group, you can see the confidence with the group, you can see the speed to match route combinations, like a lot of tight window throws with that first group. I thought the tackling with the first group was really excellent. Like, just there were some situations where, like, they threw a screen to the tight end, Quan's defeating a block. I'm like, this is going to be a huge play. He falls off and tackles the running back's foot for a 5-yard gain. I was like, that's a big time tackle. There's the tackle that Quan has down at the goal line. That's a huge play, right? Noah Monogany fitting as the nickel has a great tackle on a run. Like, this is an aside, but, like, I don't know how nickels play football in the NFL, man. They are in conflict to the highest level every single down. And if you get a good nickel, man, you're going to be doing all right. So
explain what you mean by in conflict, by the way.
Oh my gosh, man. So, like, basically they've Cincinnati's in this wide bunch, or it's a stack because there's 2 receivers, right? So he's kind of apexing the stack and the formation, the run formation, right? So he's got to fit this run if they do run the ball. He's the B gap run defender, right? So that's the gap in between the tackle and the guard. So he's got to fit that gap, but he's also got to play the screen. So like if it's an RPO, like you're going to get RPO and then you're expected to haul ass and fit the B gap. And then the other thing that's crazy is you talk to some of these guys who coach run fits for nickels, and it's like if the quarterback turns his back to me, I'm a B gap defender. If the quarterback turns his face to me, I'm actually a C gap defender, or I'm like late to run fit. I'm like coverage to run fit. So like there's so much information that
By the way, while you're making all these decisions, you have to play fast.
You have to play fast, right? Like, and so you're looking at it and you're like, I don't like, again, there was one where Kane's kind of playing the will linebacker on like the first or second play of the game. They're in a wide bunch again, and Joe Burrow opens to the bunch, like, so he could throw the RPO. So they're running like Wanda away from the bunch. And you're like, that position where Kane's in, that sucks, because he's got to fit that screen. He's got to make the tackle on the screen. He's also got to fit the B gap in the run. So like, you got to have a dog at that spot, someone who's incredibly smart, incredibly intuitive, and again, can have this checklist of mental information that lets them fit and play this quickly, while also, like you said, playing fast. Like if I was out there, I'd be like, okay, backs to me, I'm secondary run fit defender, and then the ball's going to be snapped, and I don't even know what the hell I'm supposed to do. So like, I think it speaks to, again, like why why the staff is so fired up about a guy like Mike Sanders still, because when you watch him in practice, like, there's zero hesitation. There's zero hesitation with what he's seeing. So
one thing I saw last night, it feels like, and I saw this against New England as well, Jeremy Reeves is a mainstay in this regard, but
yeah,
when players get the ball in space, the Joe Witt coaching point of what he calls it arriving violently, or like the playing with speed. I mean, you saw this with Quan Martin on the goal line at the 1 yard line. I thought Jeremy Reeves had a play in the second half, maybe, or late second quarter. Same way. He did it against New England. Like, these dudes close. They have speed in the secondary that I really like. We're seeing Quan Martin become something, it feels like. Where are you on Quan? Finished last year ascending, made a huge interception against the Lions, obviously, in the postseason. But what is his ceiling, do you think?
Dude, I think he could be special, man. And it's just because of like how he approaches the game. Like you mentioned, like the speed and arriving violently, like he does that. But he also has great coverage instincts because he's played in college all over the back end. So he does have like an ability to play man coverage. He can play the post. And then he's a really good tackler. Like, and you mentioned Reeves, like I think it's no accident that like in the presser, Dan's talking about how Revo deserves more opportunity. It's because like they value physical open space tackling. Like Reeves had a great tackle in space on a screen or something like later in that game. Percy Butler did a great job. And like when you see everybody starting to do it in the secondary, it speaks to a kind of a shift, I think. You know, you get Tyler Owens, like he's kind of playing your big nickel in the first half with Mike Sanders still playing outside on the perimeter, and he's doing a great job fit and run. So whatever they're doing, maybe it's the second year in the system, maybe it's just more clear coaching, maybe it's an evolution from what they did last year in terms of like distilling information down. I think that whole back, I mean, Will Harris, dude, Will Harris has been maybe the standout for in camp for me, for his competitiveness and man-to-man situations and his ability to communicate. Like I'm on the sideline, you can hear him almost every play, like talking through motions, talking through shifts, talking through formations. And so maybe it's him. Maybe it's that veteran presence that's kind of getting everybody on the same page. But that group feels so different than it did last year. And again, like, was it perfect for them last night? No, it wasn't. They had a couple penalties. They had that kind of ticky-tack PI on Noah in the red zone. Again, like, I don't know. I was standing right with the referee. No, this is a true story. I was standing right next to the referee. They bumped into each other, and then he threw the flag. And I'm like, he shouldn't have called it for that. And then you look at the Jumbotron, and then you see a little bit of pull, but like there's no physical way for him to have seen it from where we were standing. So I'm like, what are you throwing the flag on? Anyway,
right. He may have accidentally been right on the little grab on the collar, but he didn't see it.
Yeah, you didn't see it. So I was like, how did you throw that? You know what I mean? Because like I'm right. Anyway, but I do think like, so was it perfect? No, but I do think you see, like when you talk to Fred, when you talk to Santana, when you talk to Fletcher about like what made their defenses great when they were here with Washington, it's the communication, and you're starting to feel shades of that, I think, where they're playing fast. And again, like the other thing with that first group, you know, they've been playing a lot of man. They're blitzing a lot. They brought some zone pressures. They played different zone shells. Like they did some different stuff, and it also looked fast and it also looked confident. So I think I'm really excited to see that group if they can carry that momentum into the season when offenses have larger playbooks at their disposal.
Will Harris had a great play on the goal line too, on a tight end PBU where he was tight in coverage on an incompletion. One of the things I was excited to see last night we didn't get to is Trey Amos against those wide receivers.
Yeah,
obviously had a tight hamstring or something. Sounds like if it was a regular season game, he might have played, but there's no reason to push it. And then just generally, I wanted to see a little bit more Chase and Higgins because what I've been fascinated by at camp is how much man coverage they played. Yeah. It's blowing me away. It's super aggressive what they're doing.
So aggressive.
Curious to see if that carried over to, all right, now you've got Zero Dark Burrow over there. Like, are you still going to play that game? Did they? I mean, what were they doing on the outside? Like, what was the coverages looking like?
I think they played man. They kind of did their thing. They brought pressure. They were aggressive, but they also played more zone than they've played at practice, which makes sense to me, because like you want to see if you can get them. And they did a good job of it. Like there's a couple, like the one that Joe pulls down was, again, that's a 3rd and I think it's a 3rd and 12.
The one that turned into a sack where he ran around in circles?
Yeah. And it looks like a quarter shell, and they do a great job of disguising quarters. It becomes cover 3. Revo kind of pops down into this high cross where he's trying to get the ball. He has to pull the ball down. Madrano does a great job seeing the scramble. He's flooding the zone, so there's nowhere to go with the ball over there. And then Joe tries to loop back around, and there's nowhere to go because the rush did a great job in pursuit. So there's just enough. There's like the fastball, right? I go back to the pitching analogy. It's like you're throwing a fastball, and they want to play man and blitz, right? And then when I throw that changeup, when I throw that slider, it's enough of a variation that you see the consternation of the quarterback, like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, right? I wasn't expecting that pitch at this moment. And so I think that's if Joe can call games like that, where he's kind of walking that razor's edge of like being hyper aggressive, but also knowing when to throw that changeup pitch, they're going to be really tough out. And I think it also kind of coincides with the improvement of the front. Like, I know there's no big free agent signing there, but like, dude, like watching Javon Kinlaw when he gets his hands on grown men, just literally throw them like little children to the ground. Like, we had an interview with Deron Payne for the radio, and he was like, the stuff that Kinlaw does in practice is freak stuff. And so you've seen some of that, right? But like in the goal line sequence, he like the number 62, the right guard, full extension, and then immediately, like, I'm talking like head to the ground toss, and then almost makes the tackle on a backside run. So if you get that kind of performance from him, Dietrich Wise is crazy physical in the run game. Dorrance Armstrong, I think, has been great rushing the passer. Like, it's kind of in the same way the running backs are kind of elevating because they all are very solid players. I feel like there's some of that going on with the defensive line.
Well, this is the plan too, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they got bigger. They got more physical. And the question's going to be the pass rush. They're going to have to draw some things up in the parking lot and mix potions. But look, I mean, Von Miller can be your closer potentially. You go get him. But the size was obvious. Kinlaw is a smart car. And this is I've been out there for 26 years at training camp. I don't think I've ever seen a bigger human being.
He looks different, right? Like, it's just like he looks different and he moves different. And I played in the league for 10 years, and I've seen some freaky dudes. And like when he walks up in the drill, you're like, that body type shouldn't move with that kind of snap. You know what I mean? So yeah, I agree. Smart car. I like that.
All right, let's put a bow on the defense. One other observation here on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, just because you mentioned it, like you talk about closer, I think Dorrance Armstrong rushing over guards has been a problem in camp, and it was cool to see like him get that pressure on Joe Burrow rushing over the guard. Like, you talk about where's the pass rush coming from? Like, for whatever reason, like on the perimeter he's solid, but as a 3 technique rushing on 2nd and 12 or 3rd and 12, like people just can't block him. So if he can continue to play that way, rushing in that way, and Frankie Louvu can be a blitzer. They had some great rushes on backs. Like, maybe this is what I'm saying. If Joe Witt Jr. can find these matchups for these players and put them in good positions to be successful, Frankie Louvu on backs, Dorrance Armstrong on guards, then you get Von Miller rushing on the perimeter. Like, that's going to be a nice aggregate of sack production or pressure production over the course of the year. And obviously guys got to stay healthy and all that kind of stuff, but it's interesting watching it in the preseason and watching it in practice and saying, like, if this keeps following the trajectory, kind of like the Jalen Lane thing, this could be pretty impressive.
Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen take command. Have we seen Brian Robinson's final game with the Commanders? And what lies ahead now for Washington? Will starters play against the Ravens? We'll get into those things as we continue on Take Command. Take Command with Logan and Grant Paulsen. It's going to be weird if I combine it like that, Logan. Logan and Grant Paulsen. It almost sounds like we're like Brad and Jennifer or something. Maybe I should say Logan Paulsen, comma, and Grant Paulsen. But either way, we're the Paulsen boys. We're here.
Yeah, the Paulsen boys. We're here.
There you go. On Take Command. I want to get into Jayden Daniels in a moment and look ahead to the Ravens, but got to get some thoughts on Brian Robinson because this was the big story before kickoff, kind of late developing. Robinson has been the mainstay, bell cow of sorts, first and second down the last 3 years, a third-round pick by the Rivera-era regime. And it certainly looks like we're headed for a divorce here where not only did he not play in the game, he was not in the stadium. And then after the game, Dan Quinn said that he and Adam Peters met with Brian Robinson after a Sunday walkthrough. They told him he wouldn't be playing. He didn't say that we told him he's not going to be on the team, but that's kind of what it sounded like because he even addressed the team in a meeting on Sunday night at the hotel. How uncommon is that for a coach to talk to the team about a player who they've said is not going to be playing in a preseason game? I mean, that tells me something here is pretty serious.
Yeah, I don't know if it's uncommon. Like, I don't know if it's uncommon or not. Like, in my time, like it maybe happened once or twice where it's like, hey, we're going to go in a different direction, or this is what's happening with this guy. And, I appreciate that Dan does that, like he doesn't shy away from those moments. Cause like, there's times where like, I'll tell you this, like been in Atlanta with the other GM there, or when I was in Houston, and it's like, hey, where'd that guy go that was here? It's like, oh, they just released him. And like, there's no, and he was like a big part of the team. It's like, oh,
I was going to say, what does that say that, I mean, you're not going to do that with every player. So with Brian Robinson, they felt like they needed to address it. And Quinn said this after the game, by the way. I liked it too. He said, if they can hear it from me, I'd rather that happen. But there's got to be a threshold where you're not going to tell them, every single time, when respectfully, like Tay Martin is not on the team anymore. So it obviously says that it was going to be fairly jarring to the team if Brian Robinson's not going to be in the mix moving forward.
Yeah, no, I think it's like one of those things where, like you said, I think we as the media have viewed Brian Robinson in a very specific way, and we in the media are going to ask questions about Brian Robinson not being on the team, especially, and we in the media are going to ask questions if he's not at the game. So how do I get my team ready to answer those questions? I address it. I say, hey, this is what's going on. This is the score. This is what we're going to say. Don't let it distract you from your performance. Like, again, like this is the business side of the NFL, and we're going to keep it moving. And I think like I appreciate that he's aware of that, Dan, and I appreciate that he brought it up to the team. And I'm sure the players appreciate that he brought it up. So it's not like the first question of the presser is like to Jayden Daniels, like, hey, why wasn't B-Rob here? And then he's got to fumble through an answer. It's like it's helping the player get ready for an answer. It's helping the team get ready for an answer. And then we can focus on what we need to focus on, which is winning football games. I know that maybe sound callous from me, but that's what this is, man. It's a business, and the goal is winning football games. And like this is part of dealing with the logistics of creating a roster in 2025 in the NFL.
So if Robinson's not on the team moving forward, then where are they worse off, or where do you worry about having to replace him? I mean, the fact is they really like their depth. I view their running back room like a big league rotation where you've got a bunch of fourth starters kind of. You've got a lot of depth and quantity, maybe more than the quality. I don't think you have an ace starting pitcher who's going to go out and strike out 16 or something. But they like Eckler and McNichols and Felton on the back end of this thing. We've talked a lot about Krosky Merritt and Chris Rodriguez. And I look at Robinson, frankly. I mean, this is a guy since he came into the league who's 86th in the NFL among running backs and the percentage of his carries that turn into 10 plus. They've got to get more explosive. They've got to get more bigger plays in the running game. And I'm sure they feel like there's guys on the roster who can provide that.
Yeah. And to me, it's, like some of that number is, what is it? Would you say 80th in the league?
86th. And the percentage of his carries that go 10 plus.
And some of that is because of the styles of run that they call here. Like, everyone talks about how the quarterback elevate. And we've talked about this on the show before, how the quarterback elevates the running back. And that's true to a certain extent. But like when you run a lot of RPO, when you run a lot of zone read, like the nature of that play call, there's going to be a free runner at some point if you hand the ball off, right? So that might not be entirely his fault, but I understand your point. I think when you look at the top shelf runners at the position, your Saquons, your Jahmyr Gibbs, your Derrick Henrys, they're able to hit a home run. And so I think every offense is hunting for that home run threat in the backfield. Like anything to become more explosive in the NFL in 2025, like look no farther than the Philadelphia Eagles, look no further than the Detroit Lions. Like every element of their offense is designed to make them more explosive. And that's what every team, I think, is striving to get to, right? Like every year you're talking about the big time receiver, the big time back. And so the thing here is like, what category of player do you think Brian Robinson is, right? I think Brian Robinson is a good player. I don't necessarily think he's a great player. And I think the thing with running backs, I was talking to my son about this yesterday, is the league is saturated with good running backs. So like I can be very selective about the players that I want filling that role for my team. So I think that's what it really comes down to is like, I think maybe like I said, I think Brian Robinson's a good player. I think he's a good athlete. I think he adds a lot of upside in the pass game. I think he's a physical runner. But is that much more than what Chris Rodriguez and Bill Krosky-Merritt have together in aggregate? Probably not, right? And so I think that's where it kind of comes down. It's like he's good, but he's not great. And like that's the way position's going right now in terms of evaluation. It's basically saying if you're not a great player, you're just kind of in this mix of what I'd say probably 100 running backs. And again, like that's crazy to say because you're one of the best 100 people at your job in the world, but you're not that top flight guy. And so we can always look to upgrade. And I think that's part of what's happening here. And again, I haven't talked to anybody, no inside baseball. That's just my observation about the running back landscape in 2025.
I think it's a great breakdown. It's good analysis. One of the fun things maybe as we move forward and learn each other a little bit on the pod here on Take Command is going to be the juxtaposition too of Logan, who's one of the smartest film guys I know and played in the league, and me, who's kind of more of a numbers guy. I'm a data guy, right? I didn't play in the league, but there's numbers for everything. So you're right. Like you talk about what I had said, 86th and 10 plus, and maybe that's explainable away. One of the best metrics I think for running backs is rushing yards over expected, where they're using this chip data to see what's blocked, where the defenders are, what you could have gotten, what you did get. He was 25th last year in RYOE per attempt. And then if you look at like the percentage of his yards that are over expected, it was 35th. So there were just areas where I think they'd like to do a little bit better. They like their depth. I like the direction they're going in here. They're going to get younger and more explosive and give some other guys opportunities. I got no problem with it. Speaking of explosive, though, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk Jayden Daniels. It's kind of funny. Probably the deepest into a podcast either of us have ever gone without talking about Jayden. But it was only 4 plays on the field for the first team offense. 74 yards, right down the field, explosive, 1-yard play, explosive, touchdown. But it was the first drop back of his preseason. He will probably end August not having thrown a pass because he drops back. The way he described it, I don't know if you saw it the same way. He said he wanted it to go to Rodriguez in a corner, couldn't, was laid across the middle. I think maybe Debo. And then he said he pulled it down and his instincts took over. 14-yard touchdown run. Just an electric play. Back at home. First time we've seen him moving around.
Yeah, and to me, like everyone's been talking about how good the defense has looked in practice. They're playing all this man. They're bringing all this pressure. Like that, they play Cincinnati basically in the red zone played like drop 8. But instead of playing zone, which you'd get into like cover 3 or cover 2 or some type of quarters with underneath hook players and flat players, they basically played man and then dropped that right side defensive end off as the hook player, and the post player is kind of your one high plug player there. And so, yeah, you look to Rodriguez on the corner. It gets a little bit murky because it's a corner and an out. It's man coverage. I like the matchup on the corner. It's not there. I moved to get to the ball to Debo in the middle of the field. That hook player does a really good job of feathering under the crossing route by Debo. Could you have thrown it? It was a little bit rich for my blood personally, like the way that guy's eyes are playing you there. And then remember, everybody's in man. So the plug player's to the right. The post safety is the only guy that can make the tackle. You get out there, there's a ton of grass. And, that's why he's so special. That's why, to me, like some of the difficulties in training camp are maybe exaggerated slightly for Jayden Daniels, because like you forget that he dictates to defenses with his legs too. And what I mean by that is like you will not see a lot of man coverage straight man coverage against Jayden Daniels because of what he can do to you as a runner. So here's a great call. Like if this is Tom Brady, this is a great call. This play's dead in the water, right? There's nowhere to go with the football. I'm in the pocket. It's probably going to be a sack, right? But Jayden Daniels, you want to play this man coverage? Like, forget it, man. I'm going to scramble out to my left. I'm going to make a guy miss and score a touchdown. And so, like, to me, like, it's good. It's a good reminder, and it's probably like a big sigh of relief for Cliff. Like, you're not going to see certain coverages because of who's playing the quarterback position, which is a good reminder for me too as an analyst.
If we were to track all year long, like plays where Jayden benefited from Cliff immensely versus vice versa.
Yeah.
Like I thought about this a lot last year. I think Cliff was so important to Jayden's success. But obviously, Cliff Kingsbury would tell you there are so many times where he made him right. Like this is one you're saying where you would say, all right, nothing wrong with the call, but the play, essentially, if you're Derek Carr standing there, is dead in the water.
Yeah.
And this is just Jayden. It's a 14-yard touchdown because you got 5 on it.
Yeah. And I think that like it's the same thing that makes Lamar so good and Josh Allen. It's like it's the reason the position's going to like this more athletic emphasis, right? Is because as a play caller, it's like, yeah, I think this is going to work, right? There are answers, but hey, the running back gets kind of jammed up on the release. The timing's a little bit off. The plugger gets more depth than I thought. There's nowhere to go with the football. If I'm Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, like, shoot, what do I do now? But Josh Allen's going to scramble for a touchdown. Lamar's going to scramble for a touchdown. Jayden Daniels is going to scramble for a touchdown. And so that's what I think he raises the floor of the offense. And now the next time we're in the red zone, we're not seeing that coverage. We're going to see a less aggressive version of that coverage. And Jayden Daniels has shown time and time again, when you try to change the pitch, he's ready because he understands kind of what you're going to next. And so, yeah, man, I think in this play, yeah, he elevates. And I think like that's one of the things that makes him a good example of a modern iteration of a quarterback is because of his ability to do this kind of stuff.
Commanders, Bengals in the rear view. Probably what we're going to get out of the starters. I say probably because let's turn our attention now to the Ravens. There was supposed to have been a joint practice in Ashburn this week that's not going to take place now. I don't think that's going to change the plan to get guys playing time in the final preseason game.
You don't think so? I mean,
what about you?
I maybe because I'm a fanboy, I want to see them play.
No, I desperately want it. I mean, I scream on the radio for 3 hours a day that I want everyone to play 4 quarters in the preseason. Yeah. Like it's all about me. I want to eat chips. I want to drink Coca-Cola.
You want to watch ball.
I want to watch ball. Like with all due respect, you interviewing them on the sideline and a bunch of dudes in visors doesn't really get the juices flowing for your guy. Even though I'm a big Logan Paulsen fan, I just don't think the way everyone's talking around the league who's on record about this, it seems like there's a lot of teams kind of putting the car back in the garage right now to polish it up for the car show coming up in a month.
Yeah, I remember talking to somebody late in my career about this, and they were saying that like this game works because if you get some type of soft tissue, some type of ankle sprain, it's okay because you have next week off, then you have that kind of pseudo bye week heading into the year. So you have like 14 to 16 days, depending on when your game is. So you can get healthy off of like a nick, right? But if you take that third game and you play, you do have that week off, but it's like it's a little bit tighter window. So again, like
what's your guess? I mean, I would have said absolutely not because the joint practices would have sufficed. But without them,
absolutely.
Do you have the first team offense break a sweat? It's also worth noting, even though they went 74 yards on 4 plays, like Jayden was out there without Tunsil, without Coleman, without Cosme, which will be the same in this game if he goes. But it was still no Ertz, no McLaurin, no Noah Brown. So like it was kind of like the offense has not been together at any point still.
Right. Yeah. And again, that's probably pretty frustrating for Cliff. And I think he said as much in his presser, but like, I think that again, if I'm, there's 2 ways to look at it. Like one, I want to make sure Jayden Daniels is ready for the season. So if Jayden comes up to me and says, "Hey, I want to play in the 4th preseason game," I'll be like, "Okay, you're going to play." And I'm probably going to call 5 runs. We're going to punt. And I'm like, "Okay, you played. Let's get out of here." Right. Cause like he's the thing that makes the season go.
Now you're ready, Jayden. How did you get
you're ready to
work?
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, like he's such an important piece. Like, I was answering something on my Twitter before the game and it was like, strength of schedule is different, like primetime games. That's going to be really hard in terms of scheduling, the caliber of quarterbacks we're playing against. Like it screams regression 100% it does. But also, like, it's different when you have a difference maker at the quarterback spot, right? We saw, like, even on that play, his one play where he scrambles for a touchdown, his ability to overcome adversity and adverse situations and maximize the offense. He's going to make this team go as far as it can go. Like, obviously Cliff's going to help. The offensive staff did a great job last year. They're going to continue to do a great job. But the more I think about it, it's like, yeah, put him in bubble wrap and let's see him week 1, because if he gets any type of lingering, rib or ankle or whatever, it's like, for what? These games don't count. So as much as I want to see him play and much as I'd be excited to see him play, it's probably the right decision just to kind of chill him out, put him on ice for a little bit.
We will get that info closer to the end of the week, which is the next time we will be joining you on Take Command. Make sure you're subscribed, you rate, you review, do all that podcasty stuff to help us grow this thing. We've got a lot of fun things planned as the season goes on Take Command as well, so you'll want to make sure that you've got us in your feed. You never know when we're going to drop a pod. Sometimes Logan wakes up sweating and itching his elbows at 2 a.m, and he just wants to, talk about the Commanders, and we got to drop something in there for you overnight. So make sure you spread the word on Take Command. All right, Logan, we're back at it in just a couple of days. It was fun, man. I'm excited to be with you.
Yeah, me too, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for checking us out on Take Command.